So I'm ready to reactivate my starter or feed it with some rye flour, and I'm going to do this the night before I'm ready to bake in the morning. First of all, you can see the starter. I have it here. It's probably about a cup's worth. Sometimes I keep a little bit more because I want to make more bread, but in this case, and I don't keep the top on very hard. So we're going to empty all the starter into the bowl and go ahead and scrape the jar out. I can't really do it because I'm working here, but I don't have an extra hand, but normally I would take all of that out of there. And then I'm going to take about a cup worth of rye flour. Dump it in. And then I'm going to add lukewarm water, not too hot because you don't want to kill the yeast. Normally it's about a half ratio to 1 flour. So if I put in a cup of flour, approximately half a cup of water, but mainly you'll know by the texture. So this is for my starter, not for the bread. And you can see it's kind of like a cake batter. Let's see. So that's probably enough water. So just scrape it down, keep it nice and blend it well. And at this point, I'm just going to scrape everything down, and you can see what the texture of this is. It's kind of, maybe like a heavier pancake batter. If you wanted to make it just a teeny bit more liquidy, you could, but it's not an exact science, so just kind of play by ear and do what feels right. But see, this looks about right. So now I'm just going to go ahead, scrape the sides down. I'm going to put this back in here. I'm going to cover it with a dish towel, clean dish towel, and then I'm going to simply take this over, and you could keep it on the top of your stove if it's a warm place. Usually I just kind of keep mine in my oven overnight because it's airtight and it's draft free, so I kind of just put it in my oven, and you can do whatever you want, but basically you're going to leave it overnight and it should give a good rise. So we'll check back later. So now we've taken the starter out of its resting place, and as you can see, it's got bubbles and the texture has changed a little bit. You can see it's kind of bubbling, and that means it's a good active starter. So at this point, we're going to now prep our pans, and then we will proceed to making our bread. I have 2 loaf pans, and the smaller one will take 3 cups of flour, and the larger one will take 4 cups of flour. So I like to make the larger one, so I've only prepared the larger pan. I've sprayed it with canola oil and added a little sprinkling of polenta or cornmeal. And I kind of like to just wipe the top edges of the pan off after they've been sprayed so that they don't burn on the pan. Okay, before I use my starter, I need to reserve some for my next baking. So I'm going to take some of it out and put it into a container, maybe about 3 scoops. 1, 2, it's about half a cup. Let's see how much we have in there. Yeah. We want to make sure we get it out before we add the salt and other ingredients to the bread mix, because once you add the salt, it kills the yeast. So now to this I'm going to add about a cup, scant cup of rye flour and a little bit of water, maybe half a cup, until it's blended well. So I make sure that gets all mixed up. This is a little bit thick, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. This is hard to do with one hand. Okay, so once it's really well blended, it's going to be kind of a pancake batter consistency again. You're going to cover that, not with a permanent seal, but you go ahead and cover it. I like this one because it lets some of the air come in because it's not a tough seal. And this will just go into the refrigerator till I need it next time. All right. Okay, at this point, we're ready to roll. So I'm going to use wheat flour completely. Some people do half white, some people do half, pumpernickel. I go ahead and use wheat for all of it. So 1, 2, I'm making the large pan, so I'm going to do 4. 4 approximately. Before I add the water, I'm going to go ahead and add the salt so that it gets blended well. You're going to add 1 tablespoon of salt. And I'm going to add my seeds. If you like caraway seed, rye tasting kind of bread, you can add your seeds, as many as you want. And do it now in the dry ingredients so that it mixes well. So at this point, you've kind of blended the salt and the seeds, and now we're going to add the warm water. We put in 4 cups, so 4 cups of flour, so we're probably going to need all 2 cups of water. You want to mix it really well and stir it a little bit, turning underneath and making sure you've completely blended it. And the texture should be kind of like this. It's kind of sticky. Doesn't fall off the spoon easily. It keeps somewhat of a shape when you draw through it. It's kind of like a sticky biscuit mix. At this point, you can add your nuts. I usually like to add about a cup of nuts and blend them in. I just put the nuts in whole because once you slice the bread, they're going to get sliced anyway. So just make sure everything is, I like walnuts, but you can use pumpkin seeds or whatever else you like to use, olives, whatever. Okay, so I filled my pan. I'm going to just kind of spread it around. Make sure it goes to all the edges, although you don't have to really fuss with it too much. You can see it's pretty sticky. And it's going to go back into my oven, which is turned off. And I'm going to leave it here until the dough reaches the top of the pan. Usually it's about 5 hours. Okay, so the bread is ready to bake now. It's risen. And we're going to put it in the oven for about an hour. Preheat it and then put it in. Use 380 Fahrenheit or 190 Celsius. Okay, so you can see, here's the bread. I just took it out of the oven. Yes, you can see that it kind of pulls away from the edges once it's done. And I just ran a knife down it because I'm going to dump it out pretty much immediately. to cool, because if you leave it in the pan, it's going to steam and ruin the nice crunchy edges. So I'm going to do that now. So that just came out of the pan really easily, and now I'm going to let it cool completely before I put it in a Ziploc bag and store it in the refrigerator. It'll keep sometimes even up to 2 weeks. So bread's all done. Use a sharp serrated knife to cut it, and hope you experiment. It's not an exact science, so just have fun and experiment, and you'll learn as you go.